Welcome back. It's your godmother here. This month, February, is the birth month for both of my children, so I decided to do horror siblings. Now, these might not be siblings that are the forefront of the movie, but something about their relationship made an impact on me. This is my list. Please post yours in the comments below so that I can see them. I love your suggestions. And also, before I dive into number 10, I do have some honorable mentions. And these are movies with really fab siblings, but the movies themselves appeared on another top 10 list of mine. And you know the godmother hates to repeat herself. So allow the images to suffice. Number 10 is Malignant from 2021, directed by James Wan and starring Annabelle Wallis. This is a fever dream of a film, folks, especially the final act. It's crazy. If you're a stickler for reality, I'd skip this one. We have a crazed killer named Gabriel on the loose. We also have a woman named Madison who, following a knock to the noggin, and I'm going to put up a trigger warning. So if you want to skip ahead, when the symbol's gone, I'm done. So trigger warning. I don't mean to make light of what happened to Madison. She was hit in the head, which caused a miscarriage. So there is, child death, child loss, and there's domestic violence. And it all happens in the very beginning of this film. So, be aware of that. Trigger warning done. She has visions of people being murdered, only to find that her visions are true. These people really were murdered in the way that she has seen. We find out that Madison was adopted at age 8, and she has no memory of her life prior to the adoption. In the film, she has a sibling, a sister named Sydney, but that's not the sibling relationship that put this at number 10 on my list. So I'm going to put up my spoiler. If you've not seen this film, jump ahead to number 9. Spoiler alert. The batshit crazy sibling duo in this film is there is a parasitic twin that resides in Madison's brain, and that twin is unlocked when she receives that head injury. It's nuts. Honestly, I saw it coming. I did guess the ending. It wasn't a surprise twist, but it's so kitschy and so much fun that I had to include it in my top 10 sibling list. Number 9 is Jeepers Creepers from 2021. And do not worry. Jeepers Creepers 2 will appear on a future list, as that film deserves to be celebrated. But this one, Jeepers Creepers, the original, was directed by Victor Salva and starring Gina Phillips and Justin Long, who I know I've mentioned before is kind of a scream king. Although this list has another actor who appears twice, who's kind of hot on his heels. So, Jeepers Creepers, we have a sibling duo who are traveling home for spring break. And they have this really typical sibling banter. They tease each other, but you can tell there's some warmth beneath it. One of the things they talk about on their drive home is this urban legend about a couple that disappeared on the very same road 23 years prior. They're terrorized as they're driving by this crazy tailgater. And later they see the same vehicle parked at a church. Now, this vehicle is very distinctive. There are not two of them. So they're kind of like driving by, looking at this vehicle, and it appears that the driver is stuffing a body into a pipe on the church lawn. Now, as you're watching it, you're yelling at them to keep going. Like, don't investigate. Do not go back. But of course, they do. They investigate, and all hell breaks loose. We have a lot going on in this film. We have a demonic creature who he's creepy. The creature works good here. He's very, very creepy. We have psychic premonitions. We have gore. But most importantly, we have siblings who, when it comes down to it, would be willing to sacrifice themselves for the other. Number 8 is There's Something Wrong with the Children from 2023. and there is something wrong with the children. Directed by Roxanne Benjamin and starring Alicia Wainwright and Zach Gilford. And the siblings in this make the list because they are complete jerks, which really amuses me. This film has 3 very separate acts, and I really love the 3rd act because it went off the rails. It's unhinged. What we have in this story is 2 couples who are vacationing together. One, Ellie and Thomas, have 2 children, Lucy and Spencer. And yes, the godmother is a little more partial to opposite gender siblings because that's what I have. I have 1 of each. So go sue me, but this is my list. You can make your own list. So Ellie and Thomas have the children. Margot and Ben are their childless friends. Act 1 is the couples discussing some marital issues between Ellie and Thomas that were the result, well, not the result, but were not helped by the fact that they engaged in a foursome that went wrong. So Margot and Ben volunteer to babysit the children so that Ellie and Thomas can have a night alone and work on their marriage. You know, Margot and Ben are gonna have a slumber party with Lucy and Spencer. During that day, everybody goes on this hike in the woods, and they go into this cave, and there's this huge chasm. It's like an old fort in there, and there's this huge chasm in the middle, and the kids are really dangerously close to the chasm, and the adults are like, get back, get back. So that night is the slumber party, and the next morning, Margot and Ben can't find the children. So Ben goes to look for them, only to go back to that old fort and see them jumping into the hole. And then he runs back to the cabin, and moments later, the children are there. They beat him to the cabin. So Act 2 is Ben being completely gaslit and tormented by the children. And he's also gaslit by the adults to an extent, because Ben, we find out that he had experienced psychotic episodes in the past. So the adults are sort of, weary about taking everything that he says seriously. They kind of take it with a grain of salt, and the children take it and run with it. And it is kind of nice to see a male character being the one who's gaslit for once. Usually it's the female characters that are gaslit. And then Act 3 becomes Margot's final girl, which again is really cool, and I loved it. For some viewers, these shifts in perspectives might be confusing. And I do want to say that the stakes in this film are much higher than I'm letting on, because people do die. Characters die in this film. And the children are super anxiety inducing. The way the siblings band together to torment the adults is very fun. And that's the reason why they made the list. And it did sort of remind me of times when maybe I was a little bit outnumbered by my own. Number 7 is The Dark and the Wicked from 2020, directed by Brian Bertino and starring Marin Ireland and Michael Abbott Jr. Trigger warning, there will be a discussion of unaliving oneself. So if that's a trigger for you, you might want to skip to number 6, but I'll also put up my trigger warning when I'm discussing it. So we have adult siblings in this film, Louise and Michael, and they return to their family farm because their father is suffering from a terminal illness. He's in the last stages. Their mother does not seem to want them there, and she keeps urging them to leave. The night after they arrive, their mother, trigger warning, commits suicide by hanging herself after cutting off her fingers. Yeah, this would be tricky to carry out, so perhaps she did not commit suicide, if you know what I mean. And a trigger warning. It becomes known that the mother believed a demon was possessing the father, and that's what's going on with him. And, at first you're like, okay, mom was obviously suffering from a psychotic break, but there are some deaths that go on following her death that seem to support this theory. This is a dark and wicked film. You want to be in the right state of mind watching this, meaning be prepared to witness some really depressing stuff. The siblings have a very realistic bond in this film, which is why this film impressed me enough to make the list. But really, the home health aide or the nurse, whatever you want to call her in the film, was probably my favorite character. Number 6 is Sinister from 2012, directed by Scott Derrickson and starring Ethan Hawke. Here comes our next Screen King. I do love Ethan Hawke in horror films. I really do. In this film, he plays a crime writer who finds snuff films in a house he and his family recently moved into. And I don't think he'd be stressed enough. These films, the films within the film carry the film, if that makes any sense. We watch Ethan Hawke watching these films, and these films are truly terrifying. They really, really are terrifying. So he finds these films and he decides to keep them a secret, even from his wife, who's now living in this house with their children, because he wants this to be his next big break in terms of book sales. And don't judge. As a writer, I'm not judging. But eventually he starts imagining like things happening in his house. He's seeing things. He turns to experts who watch the films and link the films to the pagan god Bagul, or Mr. Boogie, who is the eater of children. The siblings in this film are like this tween Trevor and Ashley, who's younger. She's a child. And there's some flipping around in this film about like which child is malevolent and which one's innocent. And that's what makes the film a lot of fun. That's what really made me enjoy the film and really enjoy the siblings in this film. That's what impressed them upon me to make them number 6 for this film. You'll notice that this film appears here with siblings and not in my top 10 creature feature, which if you haven't watched, go back and watch. And the reason for that is because Bagul looks kind of meh. Like the creature reveal is not great. But anyway, I found this movie scary, especially those snuff films, really freaked me out. And the moral of this film is don't have children. Number 5 is Goodnight Mommy from 2022, directed by Matt Sobel and starring Naomi Watts and Cameron and Nicholas Cravetti as our siblings. In this Australian film, twins Elias and Lucas return from their fathers. They've been living with their father, and they're now going to live with their mother, who's an actress. The mother's entire head is wrapped up mummy-like and bandaged because she had had some plastic surgery. She also has some rules for the kids, like they can't go into mommy's room, they can't go into the old barn, so guess where they go? Anyway, she's very cold. She's not very warm to them, and she drinks a lot. She also refuses to engage in any kind of memory play with them. Like if the boys want to play with their old toys, or if they ask her to sing a lullaby that she used to sing to them when they were babies, she wants nothing to do with that. So the boys start to believe that the woman beneath the bandages is not their mother. I don't want to spoil the ending. I'm not going to do a spoiler for this one. And I'm not going to give anything away. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it, but the suspense really ramps up in this film. The twins are creepy in a way that only twins can be creepy. They're really good. And I love Australian horror, so this is a good one. Number 4 is A Tale of Two Sisters, which is a South Korean film from 2003. And you know the godmother loves her South Korean films. I love Korean horror. This is directed by Kim Ji-woon and starring Im Soo-jung and Moon Gwa-young. And this film is based on a folk tale, and it's completely unsettling. We have 2 sisters who live with their father and their evil stepmother. And at some point, you and the godmother can talk about why the stepmother always appears malevolent in stories and fairy tales, but that's for another time. Amongst these sisters, the one was just recently released from a psychiatric ward. We find out that stepmom was the in-home nurse for the girl's biological mother, who was terminally ill. The older, more protective sister believes that the stepmom is now abusing her younger sister and that it's her job to protect her. And I'm not going to give anything else away. No spoilers. You need to watch it. This is a gothic film. It's beautifully gothic. It's a ghost story with twists. It's super fab, amazing acting, and more importantly, nothing is what it seems. So you have to watch it very carefully. Number 3 is The Lodge from 2019, directed by Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala, starring Riley Keough and Jaden Martell. And I really like Riley in these horror films. She does a good job. Here we have another stepmother story, but in this one, she's being tormented by the children instead of vice versa. Okay, so trigger warning, there is a lot of talk of suicide with this film. So if that is going to be triggering for you, please jump ahead to number 2. Okay, a man plans to leave his wife for another woman named Grace, who's played by Riley. When the wife finds out that she's about to be abandoned for someone else, she unalives herself. Grace, the new beloved, is the sole survivor of a mass suicide cult. She's the only one who survived this mass suicide. So the wife's death devastates her as well as the surviving children, Aiden and Mia. So now they're kind of like this forced together family. Months later, after the mother dies, dad decides it would be a grand idea for them to all spend holidays in this lodge so they can bond and laugh and high-five each other in slow motion. And spoiler alert, nobody wants this but dad. Like, nobody's into this idea but dad. But they go along with it. And dad, the one who wants this, suddenly has to return to the city for work, leaving Grace alone with Aiden and Mia. What's so horrible about this film and so creepy but entertaining is the lengths these children go to gaslight Grace, knowing she's mentally unstable. They know she has psychiatric issues and they use them against her to torment her terribly. This film is like The Shining meets Crazy Cult, and I'm terrified of those hellishly snowy hellscapes. And this has that. There's snow everywhere. I hate that. That's why these siblings land at number 3. Number 2, we're almost there, is Black Phone from 2021, directed by Scott Derrickson and starring Ethan Hawke. Yay, Ethan, making the list twice. That deserves an award. Despite this being a newer film, this is my nostalgia pick, as it takes place in 1978, and it's so 1978. Like, you can almost taste 1978 with this film. There's a local predator called the Grabber, and he abducts children. We have a boy named Finney being abducted. His younger sister, Gwen, is relentless in her goal to find him, and this is why this film makes my list. Don't get me wrong. I love this film. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it in an incredible amount. Loved it. It creeped me out. Ethan Hawke completely scared me in this film. I was so convinced he was going to kidnap me, even though I'm a very old lady. I kept looking out my windows for him. Like, I was terrified by him. But anyway, the sibling relationship in this one is so heartwarming and so relatable to me, as I know my daughter would scorch earth the neighborhood to find her brother if necessary. And that's what puts it at number 2. Number 1 is The Innocents. And y'all, if you have not seen this film, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You need to see this film. It's amazing. It's incredible, this movie. The Innocents is from 2021, directed by Escovat and starring Rocco Lenora Fladum and Alva Bernsmo Romstad. This is a Norwegian film, and I'm sorry, I probably butchered those names horribly. The child actors carry this film. They're phenomenal. I have no idea how the director got such performances out of these children. They're amazing. There's one kid that I've never wanted a child to die more. I've never just so actively rooted for the death of a child than I did this one, because he's horrible. He's awful. But anyway, we have 2 sisters in this film, Ida and Anna. Anna has nonverbal autism. She's very much on the spectrum. And the film does a fantastic job of showing the impact this has on the family dynamic and on Ida, like the responsibility she has to take on with having a sister with this condition. It's just spot on. I love how they don't shy away from it. They don't try to sugarcoat it. It's perfect. Ida and Anna have recently moved into a new apartment building, and they meet some other kids in their complex. And some of these kids have some special abilities like telepathy. There's some supernatural powers at play here, and it takes a very dark turn. Ida and Anna are a force. They are a force to be reckoned with. They are super siblings, and that is why they land at #1 on my list. Thank you for watching. And if you could raise a toast to my birthday babies, the godmother would appreciate it. Next month will be a celebration of Women in Horror Month. So if you don't want to miss that, please boop that subscriber button.